Today is the most important part of this entire process. Welcome to day 9, where you are learning to become a screenwriter in just 10 days. Now, if you have made it this far, you have done quite a lot of work. You have done the hard part. Today is the most important part of screenwriting, but hopefully it isn't the hardest part. Hopefully we're done with that. Yesterday would have been a bit of a workout for you, a bit of a creative sprint. Today we do the rewrites. We're going to be fixing anything that doesn't work, removing what we don't like, adding in more things that fill in the gaps. We're going to be finishing this thing off. So I am really excited to see what it is that you create. If you've made it this far, I want to just go through another recap of what it is that we have done so far. All of the work that you have put in over these last 8 to 9 days. On day 1, we spent some time together and we came up with ideas for your short film. And then we narrowed it down to one of them, as well as practicing the 1-sentence logline test. On day number 2, we learned more about theme and also our protagonist, or the main character of our film. On day number 3, we spoke about story structure and how that influences the narrative of your story. On day number 4, we went a bit further into character development, looking deeper into our protagonist, our antagonist, or, the bad guy, kind of, as well as talking a bit about our side characters. On day number 5, we took all of those resources and we turned it into an outline. We also found our main scenes for our script, as well as giving those some scene headings, so just a bit of early practice towards our screenwriting format. Then in day number 6, we learned a bit deeper about what screenplay formatting actually is, how to use it, and why it is the way that it is. Then on day 7, we learned more about dialogue and subtext, kind of understanding the importance of what is said, but also what is not said. Then day number 8, we finally worked on the rough draft for this short film. So that was probably one of the exciting parts of this. Hopefully it wasn't too stressful for you, but if it was and you got a bit stuck and you're not quite sure, reach out for help, reach out to other screenwriters. And if you haven't managed to finish the rough draft, then that's completely fine. That is completely fine. I don't know what your living situation is like at the moment. Maybe you're working 3 full-time jobs and you've got 17 kids and I don't know, whatever. You've got other stuff going on. You've got things taking up all your time. You can't quite squeeze in enough of those writing sprints to get it done. In which case, yeah, that is completely fine. Use today to just work on finishing that off. And hopefully you got most of the way through, in which case today will just be, a bit of an easier sprint. If you have managed to finish the vomit draft of your screenplay, then today we are going to be working on rewrites. Now, obviously, I can't give you specifics for your story because I don't know what your story is. But what I can do is just give you a few tips and maybe help with the mindset when you are going through these rewrites. And then hopefully that'll be enough for you to finish it off and have a screenplay that you are happy with. The first draft of your screenplay is pretty much just like a clump of raw clay, or it's the skeleton of the piece. And now through the rewrites, we start to really shape it into something. So editing a screenplay isn't just about fixing the grammar. It's about cutting any of the weak scenes or beats in the film. It's about maybe clarifying certain moments, and the rewrites can be an important stage where you figure out things that you can connect to each other, So maybe you started writing the script and just kind of see, and you just wanted to see where it went. And then as you get to the end of that script, you realize oh, wait a minute, when they get to this part, it would be really great if that, I was able to foreshadow this earlier on. So then you might take an element and you put it somewhere earlier in the script just to, again, just foreshadow that that's going to come up later in the story. So that is usually how it happens. You don't necessarily know all of these up front, and it's only after you've gotten through that initial rough draft that you kind of start to realize some of the pieces that you might be missing. For example, maybe you get to the climax of the film and you realize that one of the main characters needs to know how to do lockpicking in order to overcome the main challenge during the climax. Well, then it's like, okay, well, then maybe somewhere in the earlier parts of the film, we can just sort of tease the idea that this person knows how to do lockpicking, you know, like they've taken it up as a hobby at one point and it's been completely useless or something, but you do it in a subtle way, obviously. And that's just one example. So yeah, so you might learn stuff going through the writing process that you can start inserting other ideas earlier on so it all connects to each other. So before you actually go into your script and start doing some of these rewrites, first it's important that don't rush into it. So take a little bit of time and maybe even just sit in a comfortable environment and read the script. Read through it and try to do it as though you're reading it with fresh eyes. Try to enjoy it the way a viewer would when they are watching the movie for the first time. And if you are doing that, then you should hopefully be able to naturally sort of pinpoint the parts that don't quite feel right. Do a read through first. This is without any editing, but what you can do is take notes. You can ask yourself some of these questions. Where did I get bored? Which scenes felt confusing? Which lines made me feel something, whether that be good or bad? And did the ending land? Did the ending make sense? Was the ending satisfying? Here are 4 different strategies that you can use when doing your rewrites to help clean up your script and make it something that is actually good. The first one, which can sometimes be a difficult one to do, is to cut the weight. Some people even have a phrase that goes, kill your darlings. And that pretty much means that a lot of the time when we're making a story, making a film, there will often be scenes in there that they're in there just because we really love that moment. And it might even be the moment that sparked the idea for the film in the first place. But then once we have the story written, the only reason why that scene is in there is just because we like it. But it isn't actually serving the story in any way. It isn't moving the story forward. It isn't helping the characters grow. It just isn't doing anything. And so it's important to identify scenes like this. As hard as it might be, you might need to take that one out. And I know it's painful. It feels like you're being stabbed in the gut or something. It's important that we remove those things that aren't needed, especially for a short film, because as I said previously, it's valuable real estate. We don't have a lot of time to tell this story. And not to mention that if this film did go into production and you still have these scenes in there that aren't doing anything, then those scenes are going to cost more time and money and resources to make them. You're likely going to be getting these scripts made by first-time filmmakers or student filmmakers or someone that's pretty early in their career, clearly someone who doesn't have multi-million-dollar budgets to make a short film. So cutting scenes wherever possible is very important. Then the next thing is to condense long moments. Now, you might go through some of your scenes and maybe it's something that I do, you know, there'll be characters with basically monologues, or there'll be just long descriptions that just purely aren't necessary. So it's important to sort of go through some of these scenes and seeing what you can cut out. And sometimes it might just be as simple as taking out just like a couple of words from a couple of sentences just to make the whole reading process flow a bit better. You know, you don't want to be putting in filler words or words that just really aren't needed. There might be other things that you can do as well. So perhaps you've added in lots of locations or you've added in lots of characters. Another thing that you can sometimes get away with is finding ways to combine certain locations, you know? So if you have one location that is like the living room and then and it's just, you know, a couple of people talking or something, and you have another scene that is in the kitchen or at a different house or something like that, well, it's like, okay, well, instead of having that other scene at a different house, maybe they just do that also in the living room, but you just film it a little differently, like different angles or a different time of day or something like that, to then reduce the logistics that are going to come up later on when someone's actually making this movie. So just finding ways you can also do this with characters too. So you might have multiple characters, but you realize, oh, actually, maybe those 2 characters could actually just be combined into one person. You even get this a lot with movies that are based on true stories. Maybe having a lot of different characters might be a bit too confusing for an audience. And so even though it's based on real events, they will combine 2 real people into one person so that then that one character sort of shares all of those important moments of those 2 people. And it just kind of makes that one character twice as interesting rather than having 2 people that are not really interesting enough. The next thing is to clarify anything that feels confusing. Now it's like, okay, I mean, something feels confusing, but what does that mean? I mean, again, I can't give specifics because on your specific story. But one thing that can help with this is sometimes just revisiting that story structure. And there are different types of story structure. You can absolutely research some more. If we're just looking at the 3-act story structure, you can bring that back to your story and think, okay, well, this part doesn't really make much sense. What does a story structure recommend as the natural flow in a story? And then maybe you can rearrange a few things to fit it in place. Of course, if there are certain details in the film that just sort of come out of the blue, that can be a bit surprising to the audience and not necessarily in a good way. So then maybe you can do something earlier on that can kind of allude to that. Similar to my example before with foreshadowing something that comes up at the end of the film. The 4th thing is strengthening the beginning, the middle, and the end. For the beginning, it's important to understand that this is the moment of the film that really needs to capture attention. It needs to show people that this is the experience that you have signed up to watch, and it's this amazing thing, and it's really interesting, and you definitely want to see what happens at the end of this film. So that's pretty much what the first couple minutes of the film need to do. It needs to do something that captures attention. It needs to have what people call a hook. So that's why in James Bond films, it always starts out with some kind of action-packed sequence with lots of stuff going on. Your film might not be an action film like in James Bond. The same approach still applies. So the first couple minutes of your film need to grab attention. If it's a romance, then, what could that mean? If it's a horror, it means that we're probably getting teased about something scary and dangerous. If it's a comedy, it means there's something ridiculous and funny that happens perhaps, or perhaps tragic, because then you can sort of contrast it later with all the funny moments. So at the beginning, it is important to capture that attention so that they know the experience that they have signed up for. Then, of course, we have the middle of the film, the 2-act in the 3-act structure, and the middle needs to hold that attention, and that's why the 2nd act can sometimes be a bit tricky. So the 2nd act needs to continually raise the stakes. And then finally, the end of the film, does it make sense? Does the end of the film build upon everything that has happened so far? So maybe you have an ending of the film, but the climax that happens is completely unrelated to what happened before. So maybe the person starts out as like shy and they want to be brave by the end of it. But then the climax of the film is like they've now learned accounting or something. That's a dumb example, but you get what I mean. The ending is just something completely different to anything that you've even discussed in the rest of the film. Hopefully that's not the case, but if it is, then it might just be worth re-looking at that climax and seeing how you can tie it into the other things that happened in the film. And maybe you've gotten to the point where you have your climax of the film and you really love it exactly the way it is, but it doesn't tie into the rest. So then maybe it's just about going back and adjusting some of those things in the beginning. So maybe if someone does become an accountant and somehow that's the climax of your film, is that the climax of your film? Then you go back to the beginning of the film and you start writing in hints like, oh, I really wish I was an accountant. The next section of this video is just talking about how we can sharpen the emotions. So like I've said in previous videos, every scene should make the audience feel something. The main character of that scene, they're going to be having some kind of key emotion. They're going to have some kind of objective that they are after with something stopping them from getting there. So that has all kinds of emotions going on, and you want the audience to really feel that. And you want there to be a lot of emotional evolution through your film. There'll be sad moments, happy moments, angry moments, happy moments. You want to recheck the character arc. So like I've said, if someone has a revelation in the beginning, you might need to go back and adjust how they are introduced in the film so that that arc is relevant, so that the beginning is relevant to how that character ends. You want to go through and you want to revise all of the dialogue in your film. So if you do what I usually do and you've got paragraphs or you've got like monologues of dialogue, then go through it and see what you can cut out. So one important thing with dialogue is just going through and seeing if there's a way that you can show that same information through action rather than dialogue. So keep your dialogue minimal. So if somebody is sad, or if they are angry, or if they are lying or cheating, or then try to avoid it being revealed purely through dialogue, like, oh, you stole that thing, you are a bad person. Instead, see if you can show some kind of action, whatever that might be. Try to show it physically rather than in dialogue. Keep the dialogue minimal and translate all of that into action and stuff that we can see. And remember that just because you want a scene to be tense doesn't mean people need to be loud. It doesn't mean that a lot needs to happen. Sometimes you can get dramatic, tense moments through silence and through nothing happening. That might be a helpful thing for you to practice and focus on. So if you have a bad guy in your film and he's like an angry person, being an angry person doesn't mean you're just like shouting and violent all the time. In fact, I would probably say that if you have an angry person who is trying to be calm and they're like whispering all the time, or if they're just silent all the time, then that just brings a whole level of tension and makes them a bit more unhinged even. So now I'll just go through a quick list of what the second draft should be. You want tighter story flow. You want clearer character motivation. You want scenes that feel necessary and impactful. You want a script that's not final draft quality, but it is much closer. And the outcome is a polished second draft that feels like a real short film. The homework for today, of course, is to work on these rewrites. Now, once again, you don't even need to finish the rewrites today. In fact, I would probably say make sure that you take that break before you start doing the rewrites so that you can really think about it and process what it is that you've done and what it is that you are seeking to create. Do a read through and take notes on what can be changed and what can be adjusted. Tackle just one pass at a time. And some passes might just have a few tweaks here and there. Some passes might take a kind of total restructuring. I've had to do that many times. It's not a great feeling, but then once you've done it, you realize, yeah, that was definitely the right choice. If that film had went in production in the earlier stages, then people would have wasted a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of resources. Fixing mistakes and improving the story in the writing stage is the best and most cost-effective and time-effective solution that you have. You don't want people getting to the editing stage of the film and realizing that, oh, it would have been better if there was a scene here or if that scene was taken out or something. If you find any scenes or just any lines that don't work, don't make sense, ruin the pacing, then cut it. And that is an important skill to practice. Identifying the problems and learning how to be okay with removing them. So by the end of today, you will have a much cleaner, a much leaner second draft of your script. Now, tomorrow we are going to talk about what happens after you have a finished script, but also giving you a little bit of time to do some of those final tweaks and hopefully finishing it off. So day number 10 is learning that once you have your finished script, what are the options? What do you actually do with it now? How do you find these filmmakers? How do you actually get it made into something so that people have a chance to see your work and understand your talents and your skill set and want to work with you again? You want people coming up to you asking like, oh, what other scripts do you have? We want to do that one too. We want to see that. Once again, you've done a lot of work. Today will be a little bit more in the homework stage. I just want to say congratulations because you have done a lot of work and it's taken a lot of time to get here, and I don't know how long it's been since you've wanted to become a screenwriter. Maybe you've just discovered this course and wanted to give it a go. Maybe you've been wanting to do it for years but have just kind of been procrastinating. Whatever the reason, whatever the time frame, you are here now, and by tomorrow you will have a finished script and you can take that script and you can do so much with it, and you're going to learn so much by the end of this stage that then when it comes time to doing your next script, it'll be a lot easier and it'll be a lot better, and you'll continue doing this for years until eventually you have just a collection of really good scripts. So that is it for today. I don't want to drag it on too long. I want you getting into your rewrites and really fine-tuning your story. So with that, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.